Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. I have the original recruitment podcaster on today, Kevin Green. How are you, sir?
I am fine. Sitting at home like the rest of us, so it's all a bit surreal, but it's just that we're all going through the same thing at the same time, aren't we?
Kevin, for the younger viewers out there, can you explain who you are?
Yeah, I suppose to the recruitment industry, most people would know me. I did nearly 10 years as the chief exec of the Recruitment and Employment Confederation. Prior to that, I was an HR practitioner, HR director at Royal Mail for 5 years when we did the big transformation. Ran my own HR consultancy before that, HR roles, I suppose, early in my career. Since I've sort of left the RAC in middle of 18, I've been doing non-exec stuff. Published my first book, Competitive People Strategy. Get it on Amazon. It's a cracker. So now I suppose I'm advising lots of different businesses. So either strategic advisor, non-exec, or where people are high in the strategic mix. Recruiters, consultants, professional services, technology.
When did you become a fabulous public speaker?
I've always enjoyed it. I suppose early in my consultancy days, I ended up doing quite a lot of public speaking. I then ended up doing loads of stuff at Royal Mail because obviously we had 6 bouts of industrial action. I had to do all the TV stuff, so I was on the news most days and radio and all of that. So I enjoyed that. When I was at the RAC, I was then talking on behalf of the industry. So I've done a lot of it throughout my career, but I enjoy communicating. I enjoy giving people ideas, trying to spark imagination and energy.
I went to a fabulous talk that you hosted, and you were sparring with Bill Bowerman the whole time. Okay. And I thought it was just brilliant. He comes from a much different angle, and you came from a more like, no, don't take everything he's saying. Like, we're still doing well, just keep doing. And then he was like, no, robots are going to take over. And I just thought the chemistry between the two of you was excellent.
Yeah, I think you've got to find people that have got differing views. And I think what I would say to most recruitment businesses is you've got to listen to people, but they're going to be people on the fringes. And, and Bill's always, technology is going to change everything. Well, yes and no, I agree. It will change and it will create different opportunities, different tools. But at the same time, the world doesn't completely change. What stays the same is also quite interesting. Yeah. So again, one of the things I learned when you look at big transformations is most people oversell the change and don't talk about what stays the same. And if you think about it, it's normally 80-20. 80% stays the same and 20% changes. So your communication to your market should be saying, how do you get better at the 80%? And here's 20% of new ideas that you should be looking at. So, yeah, I talk a lot. I've done stuff in lots of different stages. But it's about communication. It's about, coming up with things that are interesting. If you really get inside the head of your audience, what they're struggling with, and just give them a couple of takeaways, that's what most people are looking for. A couple of things I can go back into my organization and think about and do differently.
The podcast that you used to run for the RAC, the Scale Up Podcast.
Yeah.
I basically took a large part of your interview with John O'Sullivan and then just used that as a format for how I do my interviews. It's fascinating. Was there any other ones that stood out in that series?
Yeah, there were a couple. There was a few. Actually, I went back and listened to a couple not long ago, partly because of the COVID stuff. Steve Ingham, the guy that's the chief executive of Page, is definitely worth listening to. Because again, if you put S3 on one side of the equation and Page on the other, completely different business models. And Steve said a lot of interesting stuff about how they develop talent, how they reward talent. It's all about the team. It's all about P&L. Then you could have someone like S3 on the other side. That was a good one. The other one that I thought stood out was Adam Buck from Faden International.
Yeah, that was an excellent one. Yeah,
it was and he said something that I talk a lot to recruiters about. He said, I've got to grow the bit at the speed of my talent. And I went, what do you mean by that, Adam? And he went, well, it's simple. I think of myself and I go, my competitors know who my talent is, right? They know, this is your game, really. But they know who my talent is. They can always knock on their door and offer them an extra 20 grand and a bigger incentive. It's you to give great opportunities to that talent. I want some of your business, they know your DNA, you're giving them the chance to be the number one in that particular area. You give them a profit share. And I thought there was something really quite powerful in that, because the problem with growing a recruitment business when times were different, it's all about, can you get people that can build great teams and inspire and motivate people and be a leader in their own right. And finding those people is difficult, and as you know, and then retaining them is a challenge for a recruitment business. And so I thought that was pretty profound. Greg Savage was good fun as always. John O'Sullivan. Johnny Campbell was good, actually. I did a really good one with him and the guy that ran Indeed in Europe. And that was quite a challenging podcast because we were talking about technology and stuff. And so there was some great ones.
Yeah. No, it was really good. I took a lot from that series. Some could say stole a lot from that series.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Someone said to me a long time ago, you'll like this one. Someone said, and I said, look, this is not my original idea. This is from someone else. And I was sharing, quite often in my speeches, I share lots of ideas from different places. And someone said, that's deep research. And then someone else went, isn't that just nicking good ideas? I went, I don't know, I'll go with the deep research.
What did you learn from your 10 years at the RAC? What surprised you?
Well, one of the reasons I took the job was I thought the industry needed a bit of a kick up the arse, if I'm being honest. It had major reputational issues. It didn't always behave how it should do. And if we want to be perceived as a professional service business, then we needed to change our behaviour. I was a bit provocative through the selection process. I wasn't too sure I wanted the job, and eventually, you can be as provocative through a recruitment process if you're not sure you really want it, and there's lots of other opportunities. And eventually, I start to think, actually, there's something in this. So it's not a job I went out to get. It's a job I sort of, someone came to me and I loved it, actually. I love the industry. I love the dynamism, the entrepreneurialism, the energy, enthusiasm. There's nothing better. I remember going to loads of different recruitment businesses and meeting their recruiters, often in, internal awards or nights out, and just the energy and enthusiasm is contagious. It's a great industry, but it actually had to grow up. It had to develop. It was still quite in its infancy. The entrepreneurialism sometimes is a bit unbridled, and so for me, the job at the RAC was to represent the industry, push to government, make sure they don't over-regulate us and do silly things, hold up the mirror to the industry, but also look at development, so the whole scale-up campaign about how to grow a business and how to do it the right way, how to hire people. We did qualifications and training for recruiters and people that are managing recruitment businesses, because for me, that was the journey. Hold up the mirror, but then help people learn, develop and grow and run their businesses effectively. So, it was a great 10 years. It was a great job. I loved it. But, it's time to move on. Once you've done 10 years, you've done 2 or 3 reinventions, somewhat, hand over to someone else. But the industry, I saw it at early, it was 27 billion, went down to 19 billion in the last recession, lost 30% of sales, and then came all the way back up to 37 billion. So 27 billion down to 19, back to 37. So, we went through the downside together and we came up through the other side, which was refreshing. Employs 100,000 people.
Winners and losers on the bounce of this. But just before I jump into some of that, what's the difference between the RAC and APSCo, for example? Are they similar?
Well, yeah, there's lots of team as well. There's lots of different organisations, and now you have organisations like Elite and James Osborne's, TRN. I think they've all got a role to play. The REC is the biggest professional body, and it represents the whole of the industry.
Okay.
So from exec search right the way down to contingent staffing businesses. So it's the broad church. It represents. We had about 3,750 members, but we had 82% of the market by value in membership. So by far the biggest. APSCo second. APSCo focuses on just the professional sector of the market. So it's a bit narrow, much smaller, but it has a bit more of an international focus. The REC is member of something called WEC, which is the World Recruitment Confederation. And I was on their board as well. So it's slightly a different approach. Then you've got something like Team. Team's great because it's about independent recruiters doing fee sharing. I like that model. And in the States, you've got stuff like MPA, which I went over and spoke to their global conference just before the lockdown, actually. It was on the last plane out in New Orleans. Thanks.
Really?
Yeah, thank God I got that.
Yeah, I'm considering joining the MPA this week.
It's good. It's a good organisation. I like Dave Nerds. It's a really, they're a nice bunch of people. I talked for them last year in Porto, and then this year in New Orleans. So
it's
team,
huh? It's a hard life you have.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he started with that. Well, why do I get invited? Because normally I say stuff that's quite practical and real, and it's not a theoretical approach to running a recruitment business. It's about, here are some fundamental truths, really. But I also talk about the market and the shape of the market in the future, and what I think recruiters to be doing to future-proof their business. So, I talk about the here and now, what you need to, the challenges, but then talk about the opportunities and the things that people need to be doing to get ready for that.
Yeah. What do you think they are right now?
Well, I think it's slightly changed since my presentation in New Orleans, in that let's start with the COVID-19 thing. Let's be absolutely honest. There has never been anything like this in our lifetime, right? Yeah. I'm an old fella. I've been around through 4 or 5 recessions. I sort of understand how they play out. And just to give you an example, if you look at the speed and the severity of this, normally when we go into a recession, so I know the recruitment industry in 2008, 2009 very well, we had like a 9-month period in the lead up to that, where there was a big conversation about, are we going to have a recession? Are we not going to have a recession? So what that means is businesses can prepare gradually over that period. They perhaps slow down hiring. They think about building up a bit reserves, making sure their balance sheet's in a good order. They're a bit more careful around cash. So they're preparing that if this happens, I've got a bit of a game plan in my head about what I need to do. But this thing came on us within a week, basically, from social distancing the first week to lockdown on the following Monday. And that basically is like an asteroid hitting the economy. 75% of the economy has just stopped, right? Hotel, hospitality, you can go sector by sector. It is just not functioning. And so what that means is, so for a recruitment owner, you didn't have any chance to see this coming, really, unless you were really keeping an eye on the pandemic in China. But, about 2 weeks out, people were saying, it's sort of being contained. And,
I have clients who have offices in China. They didn't expect it to hit Europe, or at least they were still hiring people for me in London.
So. Yeah. So the point, I think, is it's come on very, very fast and very severely. The second thing, I suppose, is just about jobs. If you look at the jobs market, in the 2008 to 2011 period, we basically added about 1 million people to unemployment across 3 years during that recession. In the first 2 weeks of this pandemic, 950,000 people registered for universal credit. So what this shows you is businesses, and that is even after the government took some very sensible action with furloughing and the job retention scheme, businesses have shed labour like they haven't shed it before in any recession. So what we're going to see is a very rapid rise in unemployment over the next 2 or 3 months. I mean, I think we'll get up to about 8-9% very, very quickly. And we were under 4. we're at 3.8, 3.9. So this is a million and a bit people added to unemployment more or less overnight. Businesses are struggling. So the client of recruitment business, I don't really name them because but there are a couple of household names that I'm helping at the moment, and it's touch and go whether they survive. And these are big businesses employing thousands and thousands of people. So because it came on so strong, people are at different stages of their economic cycle. So it's been a huge shock. People have had to react incredibly quickly. I do this little blog every week just about my conversations with chief execs and MDs and HR directors. And in the first week, people were I had to send a couple of chief execs for a walk around the block, get some fresh air, clear your head, don't panic, because they just wanted to make decisions, arbitrary decisions, because they just wanted to feel that they were in control.
Sure.
So I think we're through that. People are becoming calmer. So how this plays out, I suppose, is, the economy will come back. Now, how they manage the health crisis will clearly have it'll impact how the economy behaves. So I don't think they're going to go, everything's open, back to normal. It will be a gradual lifting of the suppression. So I suspect they're talking about a regional approach or younger people going back to work. It'll still be a month, 6 weeks before they open pubs and restaurants. I think it'll be 2021 before we have concerts and football matches to go and see, before they have crowd events. So you're talking about a long, gradual lifting of the health crisis, which means the economy will start to move again, but it's going to take a long time. And forget there's a lag, because what we've currently got is a cash crisis. So what I'm saying to most businesses is, forget your profit, forget your P&L, just focus on cash. Your objective now as a chief exec or an MD is to get to the other side of this to survive. And that is about liquidity. It's just about managing cash. So you reduce your costs, you furlough your staff, you potentially then chase every debt like you never chased it before. Anything that you owed, you chase aggressively. You might need to negotiate, give people discounts, but you just need to get the cash into the business, because everyone's going to be managing cash. That's one of the great problems in the economy at the moment is supply chain, in terms of people paying their suppliers. And if we can get that to flow, that's really quite important. So chase cash like never before. Think about your staff costs. Try and renegotiate your premises costs if you've got a premise. And you may have to let some people go. Really think about which talent you want to retain and stuff. I'm a great believer in trying to get everybody to the other side, because you're providing, using the government scheme, because you're providing a lifeline to the people that will work for you as well. I think you've got to behave with some integrity. Most recruiters have got value statements and behaviours and all of that written down somewhere. This is the moment when leaders really need to think about what they've been saying to their people and live those values and behaviours. So try and get people to the other side, use the government scheme. And then I think, try and chase the cash as hard as you can. So that if you're going for a government loan, we're still not sure when that money's going to start becoming available. They are starting to pay out, but again, it's interest free. So why wouldn't you use that to help you get to the other side? Use the furloughing. Again, that means
the furloughing doesn't help your cash flow, right?
It don't. Well, it will do once they start paying out at the end of this month.
Okay, if you get the money by the end of this month.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they understand. There's an interesting fact. They thought that about 10% of businesses would use it. It looks like it's close to half the businesses in the economy.
Wow.
So this is huge.
Yeah, that means the length of time that they're able to do this, surely it just can't be extended indefinitely.
Well, the problem they've got is, if you think about what I said in relation to unemployment and what's already happened and is happening today and tomorrow and for the next few weeks, if we didn't have furloughing, this would be catastrophic. This would be unemployment at 20%.
What type of recruitment companies are you most worried about?
Well, anything, I think perm recruiters in sectors that have been, hugely effective. So if you're operating temp or perm in hospitality, this is there's just no revenue. It's stopped. You may have lots of candidates, but you've just got no jobs overnight. So that's obviously one. There are pockets of sectors that are doing okay. Obviously healthcare, and if you're operating in that sector, logistics, food manufacture, insurance and financial services. Banks haven't been that adversely affected either yet. So there are sectors which are doing okay. And I think one of the interesting things is, you just got to, there's some things that you need to focus on. So first of all, remember to keep in contact with your clients, managing those relationships, having conversations. Even if there's no work there, you try and help people, you build up your equity, your relationship equity with your clients, because they remember the people that help them get through the tough times, and that's what helps you on the other side. So you need to keep the contact going, and if you've laid off your consultants or you furloughed them, make sure that you've got enough information and you're going around and talking to all your clients as often as you can and trying to do them favors. Candidates, now think about this, guys, particularly in candidate short markets. What you've got to do is you've got to pick up the talent that was in short supply, because if it was in short supply before, it will be in short supply once this thing bounces back. So actually being able to capture some fantastic talent that you represent is a huge opportunity as well. Because again, you'll be then first out of the blocks, bit of exclusivity if you can get it, represent some great talent. And then as soon as people start getting a bit confident and hiring starts, you're incredibly well positioned to help people, individuals and businesses do the thing that we do best, which is matching people up and creating some beautiful work relationships.
Are you hearing anything from private equity houses that support the industry?
Yeah, I've worked with a couple. I think they understand that recruitment businesses ride the economic wave. So in a downturn, it's, so if you looked at the economy during a recession, it went down, I'm trying to remember, about 6%. Our industry went down 30%. So, So on the downside, we outperform, which is a really bad place to be. So, and we're talking about the economy, 35% of the economy just not functioning. So, we are going to be going down an eye, really. It's going to be rapid and straight down. The other bit that's interesting is that when economies start to move again and you get a little bit of growth, so if the economy is growing by 1.5%, 2%, the recruitment industry start going by 10, 12, 13, 14, 15%. So we outperform it on the downside and we outperform it on the upside. So what private equity are clearly doing is, first of all, getting a bit nervous. But what they've got to do is, as long as the business is making the right decisions, cutting its cost, focusing on cash, trying to get to the other side, doing the things I talked about, clients and candidates, then, you just have to, sit tight and wait to come out the other side. There's no easy way out of this. There is no easy way out of it. But, if you were a really good recruitment business pre the recession, you do the right stuff during it, you'll come out in a good place. And you'll then have a 2 or 3 year period of really rapid growth. And what you're trying to do now is position yourself for that. So don't completely stop your marketing, keep a bit of presence, do some webinars, talk to people. Do you know what I mean? You've just got to do some sensible stuff while managing cash aggressively.
What does your week look like now in the coronavirus?
Well, it's like most of the people, I seem to be busier than ever. Not quite making as much money.
You've plenty anyway.
Well, the conferencing stuff as well, you do a couple of people doing live conferences on this stuff, but in reality, that's gone for 6 months, I think. A lot of the consultancy stuff I was doing a few projects with people. The non-exec stuff has continued, but like everything, I've had to reduce fees and be helpful to people, which I've done. But obviously, one of the things I would say is I think this has proved a time when non-execs and external advisors are really, really paid, they're worth their weight in gold. Having people that have been around this a few times is quite helpful to young entrepreneurs, because they won't have experienced anything like this before. And as I said, there was a couple of MDs, you just want to calm them down and get them not to make any hasty decisions. I'm a great believer on sleeping on stuff. Just say that to someone. Look, I know you think that's the right idea, but just leave it till tomorrow. Have a decent night's kip on it, or you might not have a great night's sleep, but just give yourself some time. The brain works in really interesting ways. And if you still want to do it, then do it. But so my week is, I would say, I'm as busy as ever. I've also got a couple of clients that are struggling, big corporates that are struggling, and they're having to think about their HR strategy, and I'm helping another one do 5 pieces of union negotiation, trying to get a radical solution to save a business, which is, interesting, very interesting. In fact, it's a fantastic case study, but can't say too much about that because they're all quite sensitive. But so, yeah, it's what happens is interesting opportunities come along. They're not always about growth. They're often about survival and getting to the other side. So it's the other coin of what we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years, which is about growth, hiring, where do you find talent, creating great cultures. And now it's about hunker down, get tight, get lean, don't kill the business, make sure you're retaining the talent you need, do the right things.
What's the odds of these furloughed workers actually coming back? What percentage do you think will come back, given that recruitment businesses are built on?
I think it'll be different sector by sector, because it depends how quickly the health thing goes by, and the problem is no one can give you a straight answer, and the government can't give you a straight answer on the exit strategy because they're still looking at the science and the data. Because I would imagine that there might be a this is my gut, so this is, I'm not a healthcare professional, but I suspect that they might go for a regional approach. London will be last. I'll be honest. I think London will be last because that's been the hotspot, and you've got 10 million people in close proximity. Whereas, you might go some of the smaller cities, somewhere like Leicester, where you haven't got you might go, well, let's just release it there and see what happens. Is there a second wave? Can we get people back to work? Can we do social distancing at work? I do think remote working will continue quite a lot. There'll be a long lag on it. Even if we do bring people back to work, I think what we will do is continue with a mixed approach. I don't think everyone's going to go flying back into public transport and back into central London. I think there'll be perhaps people working the odd day at home and then an odd day in the office.
How do you think this is going to change the world? 3 years down the road.
Well, I think people will. There's loads of stuff. Business. One of the things that businesses will think about is, I think, balance sheet and managing for cash. I don't think people will forget that lesson. There will be some really good businesses and some good recruitment businesses that go pop because they've overextended. They've got too much debt in the business. They can't service it. They've been growing too quick, and and there'll be lots of technology businesses and lots of startups that really, really struggle. Because they're not profitable, they haven't built up cash reserves, and they've been dependent on funding, and the funders just go, "Ooh, I'm not sure I want to take lots of risk at the moment," and the money men just evaporate. So there'll be lots of good businesses that go to the wall. So I think people will learn that lesson. Contingency planning. This isn't a black swan event. This is a white swan, and a black swan is where you get something which is beyond the realms of human understanding and planning. We've talked about pandemics for the last 20 years, and there have been a couple of scares, and it's only taken one to, get halfway around the world for us to end up in this state. So I think businesses will get a bit more serious about contingency planning and thinking about how you manage in these types of crises. I think the whole world of work will change a bit. I do think the flexibility and remote working. Just think about individuals have the right to request flexible working. I've worked at home. I've earned good money for you for the last 3 months. Why can't I continue to do this? Yeah. Why do I have to come back into an office and commute for an hour and a half every day each way?
The problem is it's an unfair test. If you're working from home normally in a good market, it's great. But if you're locked up in your house and the market's shite, it's not like for like, you know.
No, it isn't. But I do think that one of the things that I would say to you, got to think about your business on return. You know, there are lots of recruitment businesses that have got lovely big offices with lots of space with not people in them. And do you need those premises cost?
Do you need them in Manhattan? Do you need them in?
There you go. Well, there's questions there. Secondly, talk to your staff. When you start to come out of this, the staff that you have still got, talk to them. And I think you'll find that a lot of people want to blend. They want the social interaction. They want to belong. They want to be part of an office. But actually working at home 2 days a week, 3 days a week,
will that help
what we do. And I think that's what people want. They want a blend of both.
Will that help us retain recruiters longer in the industry as opposed to running the Hunger Games graduate gauntlet that we have been?
Well, I'm a great believer. I mean, I talk to recruiters all the time that are struggling with talent. I think women returners are a huge opportunity. People that were great recruiters, you know, hungry, proved themselves, then perhaps had kids, parent were of a certain age and needed to look after them, been out the market for a few years. Those skills don't go away. Those fundamental, you know, ability to close both candidates and clients, being able to build relationships. You know, I think there's a great opportunity. And if you said to someone, you know, we need you to come in once a week to touch base with the team. We're happy to do 2.5 days a week at home. Actually, I don't care what hours you do. I really don't care. And particularly if you're talking to candidates, it might be working internationally. You might need to talk in the evening or early in the morning. You know, I'm flexible. That's one thing we should learn. Employing people when they may have something else in their life is a good thing for them. They also become much more loyal employees, harder to replicate and move when you go to your next employer and go, well, I work 2.5 hours a week, days a week, and I work Saturday evenings, Tuesday mornings, and Thursday. And someone goes, sorry? Well, I'm not quite sure that fits with our culture. Yeah. You know, so it's a great way of retaining talent. I think it also means that you get the best out of people. If you're really providing a work environment and hours that suit individuals, you know, they give you the best when they're working there because they value what you've given them. So I think there's something in that, definitely. I think there's a bit about it just gives you opportunities in terms of office space to be a bit more creative. And I think, you know, I think there's a big opportunity for recruiters. I don't think recruiters were very good at flexible working at all before. And I think there's a big learning for them out of this. And I don't think you end up with everyone working remotely. But there is a bit of a blend and an opportunity that's worth exploring with your staff about what will work for them and what works for you. Because at the end of the day, our jobs are easy to measure, aren't they? It's output. How many placements? How many contractors out working? You know that every week you get that data. The input is their time on the phone, the emails, That can be done to suit the candidate, the client, and the consultant.
Okay, Kevin, that's us. If anybody's looking for an NED or a public speaker whenever things kick off again, where to find you?
Best one, I suppose, is Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter. LinkedIn's a good place. But, you know, I'm pretty visible out there, I think. And I'm keen to talk to people.
All right. Thanks so much, Kevin. And thanks for all your work.
Thank you for the opportunity. I do appreciate it.